At first glance, Omori is hardly the type of game I'd normally cover. Up until now, the titles I've talked about have been all visceral horror games about fighting monsters and surviving evil. Omori, in contrast, is a much more colorful and perhaps even childlike game. But don't let its exterior fool you. It ended up being one of the most terrifying and yet engaging games I've played yet. Before going too much further, two quick warnings. First is that Omori is an incredibly story-heavy game. I've kept the background video as spoiler-free as possible and will only be covering the story at a surface level, but if you are interested, I highly suggest and can easily recommend you play the game yourself before watching this video. The second warning is when the game delivers itself. Omori deals with some heavy subject matter, and this is one of the few times a trigger warning is totally warranted. With that settled, let's dig in. Omori starts out innocent enough. You'll spend the majority of the game in the black knee socks of the titular character, a young boy living in a surreal dream world and hanging out with his friends playing games in the park. After a short introduction, your friend Basil disappears, and it's up to Omori and his companions to rescue him. Joining you is the sports-obsessed Kel, his brother and the great cook Hiro, and the headstrong Aubrey. Together, you'll journey through the various levels, searching for Basil while interacting with, and occasionally fighting against, the bizarre denizens of the dream world. Not long after the game begins, you'll discover the other side, where you take the role of a young man moving away from his hometown over a matter of days at the end of the summer. This leaves you with only a short amount of time to say your goodbyes to your old friends, though it's never as easy as you think. These sections are usually much shorter and don't have a whole lot of combat, but this is where the majority of the actual story is told, and you're gonna want to pay close attention to everything going on. It doesn't take too long for the cute factor of Omori to crack, and almost from the start of the game there's an overwhelming feeling that something is very off. Everything is just too weird, and the childish art does a great job of feeding into the creepy atmosphere. That said, when the darker side of the game does come out, it comes out hard, and while it's only ever shown in short bursts, they tend to stick with you so much more because of how otherwise normal the rest of the game comes off. It's a delicate balance, and one that a lot of other games have tried and failed at, but Omori does an expert job of tightrope walking between its fun and happy side and the really dark and retrospective side. The horror elements themselves are much more psychological than most games, and they're presented in a way that tends to hurt a lot more, especially as the game reaches its climax. Omori is all about psyche breaking down, the barriers that people put up to defend themselves against trauma, and what happens when those barriers are breached and broken. There's an intricate level with Omori's horror that easily outclasses a lot of the other AAA psychological games I've played. The writing in general does a fantastic job of sucking you in. Wisely, there's a relatively small and very memorable cast used throughout the adventure, and they're all given a lot of time to shine. Many of the characters are given a decent amount of depth, so that none of them ever feel totally wasted or useless. Your party in particular is the focal point, and I'm glad Omori sticks to a small core of party members throughout the game to properly examine everyone without anyone being left out. Now, there's always a risk in story-heavy games like this that the actual gameplay takes a back seat, but in Omori that's not the case. This is a really well-made JRPG, constructed with a deep understanding of what makes the genre enjoyable. Fights rarely drag on, and with proper planning, most foes can be felled in just a few rounds. The gimmicks here are the emotions and team bars. Emotions act as buffs and debuffs, this time simultaneously. Get mad and you'll take but also deal more damage. Get sad and your defense will increase, but you'll lose mana on every hit. Get happy and your critical chance increases at the cost of your accuracy. Every party member has a bevy of abilities to cast or exploit these emotions, and balancing them becomes necessary to win. Then there's the team power bar. Whenever a team member takes damage, the bar fills up by a point. 3 points can be spent on a powerful follow-up attack or debuffs, or 10 points can be spent on a Persona-style all-out attack to deal insane amounts of damage. This becomes all but necessary against the game's bosses, which are standout fights with unique challenges. For fans of classic JRPGs, Omori delivers in absolute spades and is one of the best of the genre in recent memory. The presentation here is also top-notch. I mentioned before how the visuals do a great job of hiding the horror, but that doesn't really do them justice on their own. The game looks like a child's doodle pad, which is fitting for the theme and ambience perfectly, and yet it remains clean and easy to look at. The design of the dream world is appropriately surreal, and bosses and enemies are fantastically interesting and bizarre. Everything cleans up just a little bit during the real world segments, but throughout the game remains excellently well made. Finally is the audio, and I cannot praise this soundtrack enough. These tracks pay obvious homage to the games Omori draws inspiration from, and one of my favorite tracks was one that sounded straight out of Mario RPG on the SNES. Every song is fantastic, and there is a massive variety, including a huge amount of battle and boss music for every encounter. My only complaint is that while the soundtrack is top-notch, the other sound work just doesn't hold up, with a lot of stock sound effects and odd mixing all over the place. This is honestly probably the only area Omori noticeably falters in, as I was able to hear ambient noise tracks restarting themselves mid-clip, and a lot of the stock sounds came straight out of any library. Omori is a complete knockout of a game, a total labor of love from people that not only understand excellent storytelling, but also excellent gameplay design. It's a title that has massive appeal, and this is an easy recommendation from me. A game that absolutely needs to be played before the internet ruins it. It's a very heavy game at times, but its ability to handle its subject matter is both mature and inspiring, and I can only hope this opens people up to more hidden gems hiding in the RPG Maker scene. This is easily one of the best games of 2021, and it absolutely earns my highest praise.